Hello internets, this is Matthew. So today a quick video to discuss an interesting little project that I have. And the project is this. Well, I guess the question I should say is this. So for someone who is, has had the good fortune to acquire, a lot of really interesting gear and a lot of great guitars over time, why would I be interested in owning the world's cheapest guitar? There's a good reason for it. Well, we're going to go over that now, and we're going to unbox it, we're going to set it up, and then we're going to go from there. So step one to getting properly unboxed is to pull the thing out of my car. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we can take a look. Alright, so let's unbox this and see what you get from the world's lowest cost Les Paul. Aha! Attention! Valuable and important accessories in box. Do not discard. That message is actually pretty well timed because when I went to the music shop, I actually bought this at a local music and arts store. Music and Arts is owned by Guitar Center. It's a chain of stores that basically mostly does music lessons but sells some instruments as well. And I was honestly killing time in the local strip mall while my wife was shopping. And they were running a sale on these. As I said, it was about $100 down from the original 120, which is down from the list of, it says 200, but honestly I've never seen them at 200. By the way, this guitar is in Pacific Blue. There were a handful of them on the wall, and I should come right out and say that the ones that were on the wall had a dramatic range in quality. From ones where the strings were just in the wrong place. I mean, the bridge was moved side to side dramatically so the guitar could never be set up properly. All of them had really sharp fret ends. Instead of cherry picking the best one, I wanted to basically be able to do an unboxing from scratch and sort of see what I got. And so I decided to take one of the ones that they had in the back that was still completely in the original factory wrapping and kind of roll the dice a little bit. Also because the ones that they had up front, it's their store practice to unbox the guitars they get and throw away everything that's not the guitar. The wrenches, the manuals, etc. And I asked the guy, like, why would you how could you throw away all the accessories, the papers, the wrenches? And he's like, well, in this day and age, all the manuals are online. I'm not sure that would make me really happy as a guitar customer. Oh, this is a neat little detail here. Check this out. You can see the strap pin actually poking through the bottom of the box. It's cheaply packed. It's an interesting contrast. If you haven't seen it, there's a modern Les Paul unboxing, sort of the lowest cost Gibson Les Paul. And it's an interesting comparison to see what, how this is packaged at the China factory versus the USA-made guitars. I remember the protection there being a little bit better so that you wouldn't get the bottom pin sticking through the case. We'll have to take a look to see if that caused any damage. It obviously hit here really hard. So I think it's funny, given the fact that I was just asking him why they were throwing away all the accessories, that there's this, and he was trying to imply that that's the modern world. That's what the manufacturer wants you to do today. Well, the sticker says pretty clear that they do not want you to throw away the box and all the accessories. So I'm glad I bought one in the box. It means it's kind of a crapshoot, so let's keep unwrapping and see what we get. Now I should tell you that, ooh, look, wrenches. This feels like the same plastic wrench kit that came with my contemporary USA Gibson. Feels like it's wrapped about the same scheme with the bag and the box. So let's unwrap this. All right, so we get an owner's manual, some silica gel. It's funny, I grew up saying silica gel, even though I know the right way to say it is silica gel. I have a casino just like that. All right, let's keep unwrapping. All right, so taking away the clear plastic bag, there's I don't know what you call this material. It's like that sort of silky, it's like a dryer sheet. There's another bag that's made out of this kind of dryer sheet material. Let's cast that away. All right, we have a Les Paul. Don't want to do that. We have an Epiphone Les Paul. And look, we have a factory hang tag. It's kind of nice. Let's pull it around. Okay, so properly unboxed, or at least unwrapped, we have our brand new Epiphone SL. Okay, here we are out of the box. We still have the little factory foam over the switch. Let's see what we have here. One thing I should note, on the models they had on the show floor, the worst of them had some really terrible paint edging around here, where on a Gibson, there would be a piece of holly veneer put over the neck wood here. I don't know if that's a case on this. Someone wants to tell me, please let me know. Let's see if we can focus. My guess is that this is just paint rather than bothering with the cost of the holly veneer. So my guess is this is painted, but it looks good. So you've got a silk screened Epiphone logo, silk screen Les Paul model, truss rod cover. It's a nice 3-hole truss rod cover. This nut doesn't seem poorly cut. We'll see. Now all of these guitars have terrible fret ends. So part of this project is going to be taking this and seeing how nice we can make it. Now right away, one thing that's screaming at me is that, scared me for a second. This string was stuck on the edge of the neck. The string was stuck like this on the edge of the neck, and I thought actually the guitar's geometry was wrong. One thing that really kind of makes or breaks a new guitar for me, especially with a set neck, is the question of whether or not the neck is really centered, whether the distance from here to the edge of the fretboard is about the same as from this string to the edge of the fretboard. And in this case, it's actually pretty close. It's better than 2 out of the 3 were at the factory. Now the action is incredibly high. It's hard to, I'll get a gauge on it in a second, but it's really hard to tell from this angle. But, well, let's go where we can get a gauge on it. Now I had a funny comment from that Les Paul unboxing video where I said, let's put the guitar on the bench, and then the next shot was it here on the back of the couch in my office. I actually do use this a lot of the time as my guitar workbench. I keep most of the easy access Lutherie tools up here, and for doing simple setup work, this actually works really well. Whether I'm working on gun stuff or watch stuff or guitar stuff, I have a mat that can roll out here if I need it, but given I'm not really planning to do much other than evaluate this in the moment, it makes a good bench. But I will confess it is the back of my couch. So all right, let's take a look. As I said, the string width seems pretty spot on. The other thing to check is the alignment, whether the strings align right with the pickups. In this case, it's not too bad. As you can see, let's try and get straight overhead. It's pretty close to being dead center. Of course, you have this kind of compensated fixed tail piece. So you don't have a separate tail piece and bridge. You have one tail piece that also has different compensated saddles on it. In a second, we'll talk through the history of this. As it turns out, this is not a completely novel design for a discount Les Paul. We'll go through the history a little bit and talk about some of the historic models that kind of give precedent to this. It's actually a very... How cool is this? Check that out. It has a reproduction of the original warranty from Epi Stathopoulos, the original Epiphone founder. You know, Gibson Epiphone is an interesting place, right? Most of the time now they use it as a discount or their international brand to make Gibson products that are made overseas. There are, of course, some really interesting Epiphone models that are Epiphone models in their own right. Maybe we'll show some of those really quickly. And every now and then they will allow Epiphone to do something that's actually new and novel, rather than just being kind of the low-cost international Gibson. But again, so actually now is probably a good time to take a little break and kind of go through the history of this model. This style of Les Paul is not really new. In fact, this is a 1956 Melody Maker. Note the tailpiece and the shape of the pickguard, the single coil pickups, and the controls. Virtually identical. So there's a lot of history in this little piece. Yeah, I don't know if this is going to focus on that, but at the 12th fret, it's about 2 1/4, which is way, way, way too high. You know, it should be just over a mil there, 1.5 mils on the low side. So we'll have to bring the action down. Now what they do here is they've added these set screws. Traditionally, the way this tailpiece would work is that once the string tension was off, it would just fall off. And I think especially on beginner guitars, that sort of bothered a lot of people. People thought their instrument was falling apart and they would get support calls on it. So now they've added these Allen screws. These little set screws here have an Allen key hold opening on the side where you can set this so it doesn't fall off. But it also makes it harder to adjust these. So I believe you have to lower the main trick on this guitar is going to be to see if I can lower the action to the point where it's really playable, and that'll reveal whether the neck is really straight, etc., etc. So let's get about taking the tension off of these so we can bring the action down. It's funny, I'm sitting here trying to find the right Allen key to adjust this, and it's driving me crazy, but then I realized they gave me Allen keys with the guitar, so let's go get those. By the way, on the way upstairs to get that, I thought I'd, because we're talking Epiphones, give you this quick look at this 1940s Epiphone Triumph, which is in just gorgeous playing shape. The action is super low and nice, and it is 100% original. Okay, now that we have the factory wrenches, let's go about taking out those set screws. You just have to back them off a little bit here. Just to note that while I was doing this, it didn't occur to me initially that these screws not only serve to hold the tailpiece on, but they also allow you to roughly set the intonation. So you can make gross adjustments on the length of the bridge. As I've mentioned in a previous video, I'm big fans of these Grace gunsmithing screwdrivers. All right, so we want to take off, let's look at the measurements here. How far do we have to go down to really make this guy playable? We are at, let's go this way. We are at about 2.5. I think it's got to come down to about 1.5 really at the highest. So let's see how much we can take this guy down. Now they set these guitars up with such high action for a reason. Honestly, the setup is much more forgiving with the action really high. It's unlikely to buzz or bind. It's just not likely to be playable, and it's frustrating that for students, they basically, a lot of people who are trying to learn to play guitar, they have these actions set so high that the guitars are really not going to be fun to play. Now, unfortunately, I am now all the way down. And even all the way down, I am now still at 2, which is high. Yeah, this guitar is not going to be able to be set up to be playable. Let's see how low we can go on the other side. Okay, I've taken now the bridge is the bridge slash tailpiece is the lowest place it can be, and I am at 1.5 on this side, 2 millimeters on the other side. I mean, that's at the edge of being playable. It's interesting, like the little guide here. If you're thinking my personal preference is crazy, it says that for electric guitar here, at the 6th string, it should be 1.5 to 2. So we're at the very upper end on that, and 1 to 1.5 on the 1st string. So we're at the very upper limit there. Yeah, it's down as low as it's going to go. All right, so let's see what it's like here. You know, it's funny. I was just about to declare that this is going to have to go back because the action couldn't be taken low enough to make it playable. And then, of course, I remembered that as a lower cost Epiphone, it has a bolt-on neck. So that means that what we can do is we can take off the neck, shim it, so that the angle of the strings is lower. Basically, we're going to bring this part of the neck up a little bit so that this angle comes up and the strings will get much closer to the fretboard. So I wish I didn't have to do that, but let's just bite the bullet and do it. So we'll have to slacken off all the string tension. By the way, I like it when the made in China is removable. Not because there's anything wrong with that, but it's nice not staring at it. So with the string tension off, let's get at these screws. Okay, those came off uneventfully. Let's see what the neck pocket reveals here. N. It's hard to see that, but it is stamped there. Interesting hole. This is probably where at the factory they would hang the body blank for painting. All right, so let's lift and separate. Let's see what this looks like. So let's take a look at the markings on the back of the neck. There's a blue ink line, a couple black ink lines, quality control sticker that's been signed by someone. SK, another made in China, just for my reference. Let's take a look at the neck pocket. It's not beautifully finished, as you might expect on a $100 guitar, but it's actually sanded quite nicely in here. There's not any evidence of any kind of really nasty chiseling, or it's actually pretty well constructed in here. There's a bit of pencil marking here just to document. So now my conundrum here, my dilemma is I have some nice Stumac shims that are wood, that slope, that help you set the neck angle up. They're like $7, and on a $100 guitar, I don't want to use a $7 neck shim. You're already cutting it appreciably to the price. So let me look to see what I have. Okay, so all my talk about my fancy Stumac neck shims is pretty much just peeing in the wind because I can't find them. So I'm going to, and I was, as I said, I was dubious about using a $7 shim to tune up a $100 guitar. So I'm going to use the next best thing, the tried and true business card method, and it creates kind of a nice surprise for the next person who's in there. This business card is long since expired, but I'll kind of leave my signature in here, and yeah, let's do that. So I'll cut this and be right back. Okay, so we're ready to go with 2 business cards width of shim. And while I have the neck off, let me go ahead and peel away this protective plastic from the pickguard. Of course, there are 2 layers. We'll see how clean it goes. Sometimes you have to take away these screws to really get at it, and sometimes you don't. It's definitely under that screw. All right, well, I'm gonna lift some of these screws, and let's lift the knobs to do the right thing with this plastic. All right, I just made a command decision that to get the plastic off right, without leaving little bits of plastic residue underneath the screws, you gotta take the screws off. And for the purposes of this video, I might as well show you guys the underside of the electronics underneath the pickguard. So let's go ahead and take the pickguard off. 11 screws that hold this pickguard on. Doesn't it seem like someone in engineering would have said to themselves, 11 just doesn't seem like the right number? You know, 9's a nice number, 12 is an even dozen, 11, 10 is a nice number in Arabic. 11 just doesn't seem right? But there are in fact 11 screws. All right, so let's pull this pickguard up and see what we see. So interesting right away. This is actually not terribly routed. It's kind of a cool route. Looks like it's a one-piece body. Of course, there's no veneer, there's no top or anything like that. There's an OK sticker. Look at this weird A, B marking. Maybe someone was working on their ABCs, or I don't know, it's very strange. Sort of crudely painted under here, but it's not bad. Certainly cheap bar magnet pickups here. Little mini tone pots as you'd expect. This is actually not a bad switch. There's a little bit of shielding here, some shielding tape. You know, they're not the nicest pickups I've ever seen. They're clearly not the worst. Does have a grounding wire that I assume goes to one of these screws that then transfers to the tailpiece. So look, it's a simple setup, but that's the whole point of this guitar. It's the minimal you need in order to play. Let's take a look at this capacitor that's in here. It's kind of a green drop. Let's see what the value of that is. It is 47. You know, I'm tempted. Whenever you see these cheap bar magnet pickups, my first instinct is to replace them. But I would replace them with a set that costs the same as this entire guitar. So, look, are they the nicest pickup? Is that considered the most state-of-the-art way to build pickups? Absolutely not. That being said, does it work? Yes. Can it produce some interesting sounds? Yes. It should work just fine. So I'll tighten up these electronics, and let's peel off that tape and go from there. The film is actually underneath these pot screws, so to do the right thing, let's take those off. And by the way, you know, I have the skills and the wherewithal to take off all these parts and so to cleanly remove the plastic. You know, the target audience of this, some kid who's his very first guitar ever, is not going to know how to do that. He's going to rip this plastic up, and there's going to be a big chunk that's kind of awkwardly stuck, tearing out underneath that screw. I have to say, on my first guitar, it was like that forever. For a decade, there were little bits of plastic sticking out from where I didn't know how to properly remove the remove the protective film. So again, here, let me remove these nuts and we'll take the film off. Now, by the way, just interestingly enough, this is the output jack here. If you look inside, when I pulled away the plastic, you can see this little bit of material here. So this is a multi-ply material. There's some kind of permanent laminate sheet that's pressed over this pick guard. You can see it's cut there and laid down. It's not one solid piece of plastic. I guess it'd be more expensive to make a solid piece with that kind of shine. And so they just take a piece of ordinary plastic and put a piece of laminate over, because you can see where that laminate is cut there. That's not the removable pick guard. That's the permanent outer layer of the pick guard. Okay, I've now taken off even the pickup height adjusting screws, all the hardware, and nicely gotten even the last remnants of the protective plastic off of everything. So now I think we'll start reassembling and see where we are with the neck angle. Actually, before I put the neck back on, while I have such nice unobstructed access to the fretboard, let me clean and condition the fretboard a little bit. By the way, I haven't looked at the specs yet. This is clearly some kind of natural wood fretboard. I can't imagine it would be rosewood or ebony at this price point. So I'm about to look it up and see what it is. But it is, in fact, rosewood. It's going to look good treated. So we'll be right back. I'm using, by the way, this Bellin fingerboard oil, which is more of an oiled lacquer than just an oil. And so to see the difference here, I've done the fingerboard between on the first and third fret here and left the rest untreated. You can see how nicely the wood comes up. So let's go ahead and do the rest. Okay, by the way, here's the fretboard conditioned. One thing you're gonna see on a $100 guitar is that there's not going to be a lot of room left for dressing frets. So if you take a look at the fret wire here, the frets seem to be well installed, but they don't really have much of a bevel on them. It looks like they pretty much just cut the fret wires and called it a day. So I'm of two minds now about whether I should level and dress those frets. I can, but then the guitar wouldn't really be representative of the way that 99.9% of the people will experience it from the factory. Let me get out the fret rocker and let's see how good they are. So far, it's hard to do this with one hand. I'll be right back. Okay, I've made the command decision here not to recrown or level the frets. Hitting them with a fret rocker, I couldn't really find any particular high or low frets, so it's pretty good. They're not crowned very well, or maybe even at all. But let's check the... Of course, that command decision turns out not to be my decision at all. Stay tuned. Let's see what the neck relief is like. So it's not bad. There's just a tiny bit of relief in the center of the neck. Pretty much where I would set it up. So I think there's no truss rod adjusting that needs to be done here. Let's go ahead and put this back on. While I'm at it, though, I will take off these screws to properly get the protective plastic off of the truss rod cover. And I might as well, while I have the strings off, hit the nut with some nut sauce. So the first sign that this is the first place where I haven't been impressed with the construction is looking inside this truss rod opening. You can see this heavy black lacquer that they've applied, probably instead of using an actual wood veneer here. They just haven't finished it very well. And so it's a mess in here. And also, look how far down there the actual truss rod adjuster is. It's way down in there, which makes the truss rod have to work harder because it's a shorter rod having to do more work, but it's also way down in there. So, they get a C- for cleanliness under the truss rod cover, but again, I don't think they were asking for my grade. Okay, it just occurred to me that with the neck off, I should probably work on these really pointy fret ends a little bit. This is a crimson fret file, and I basically just did a light dressing to the sides to get rid of the sharp pointed ends, and it is a million times better. You know, I could really go through and dress these ends. Let me do it a little bit. Okay, I've made quite a mess here, but what I've done essentially is knock down the places where there was too much fret spout with this file, and then I've crowned with a triangular file. I've taken off the sharp bevel and kind of just dressed the fret ends. So they are a million times better than they are now. They feel great. Okay, a quick update. I've gone on in a bit of an unexpected direction, but with the leveling file and the crowning file out and a neck that didn't have very good fretwork, it was pretty much inevitable what was going to happen, which is that I leveled and then dressed and then crowned, and now I'm cleaning up the frets. So this is going to have a very nice level crowned, beveled, polished, cleaned up fretboard. Probably much more than $100 guitar deserves. And by the way, it wouldn't make sense to take this to a luthier. I mean, a luthier would charge you way more than the cost of the guitar to do this fretwork. If you can do it yourself, great. I'm not very good, quite honestly, and so I wouldn't have done this on a vintage guitar or a guitar that was very expensive. But for a $100 guitar, I can do the fretwork. All right, we'll be back. I have to go down a few more grits of sanding on the frets. Okay, well, it was probably a waste of time to oil up this fretboard before doing all the fretwork, but you know what? It probably protected the fretboard from nicks and scrapes while I was in there. So what have I done? I have leveled, I have beveled, I have polished the ends, I have now polished the frets with 400 and then two different grades of crimson fret rubbers, and they are pretty nice. The neck feels nice, the frets are dead level, and this is ready for action. Next step is just to reunite it with the body and see where we are. I know I said that some time ago, but honestly, with the neck off and ready to go, it is a million times nicer now with all the fretwork done. So here we go. Okay, so now we have leveled, crowned, beveled, and we've been over with 400 sandpaper. We've put an extra coat of oil on, we've cleaned it up. But now it's time for the 1000 grit paper. So we'll go 1000 grit, then back of the paper, and then semi-chrome polish. All right, 1000 grit. Okay, hopefully now for the last pass, we'll hit the frets with some semi-chrome polish, some makeup removing pads used to buff that stuff in. Then we'll hit it with oil one last time and we'll be ready to go back on the guitar. Okay, the fretboard is basically ready to go. I'm letting the last coat of oil dry on there. Frets are in pretty nice shape. I've made a command decision that as a $100 guitar, these strings can't be really worth a damn. I'm going to take off all the strings but the 1st and the 6th, because I'll use those to make sure the neck alignment is right, and then I'll put all new strings on of a nicer design. So away we go. Okay, I've got down to 2 strings here, ready to test the neck alignment. So now let's put our 11 screws back in. Okay, we're test fitting the neck here. So what I've done is, with just 2 strings attached, I've loosely put the bolts in. The neck's sitting on the shim. Now, and I put just enough attention so it's straight. So first of all, With the bridge all the way down, the strings are now just sitting on the neck, which means now I can adjust the bridge up to make the string height whatever I would like, which is right. But now we have to check to see whether the string spacing is right. It's pretty close. This side is a little smaller than this side, which means you want to take the neck and kind of pull it this way a little bit before we tighten it. So let's do. Okay, now we have the 4 bolts tight. The left-right string spacing is right, and the strings are now sitting on the neck with the bridge low, which means now we can adjust the bridge upward and get a nice playable position. Now what's interesting, all that geometry looks right, but the neck all of a sudden has way more relief than I remember. So I'm gonna have to take a little bit out of the truss rod. So let's do that. Okay, this is Matthew. So just to get a quick playing demo of the Epiphone SL, this is kind of neat. You can hear the noise cancellation. I'm running pretty much straight through the super reverb now. So in the neck pickup, notice you hear a little bit of buzz. This room is pretty quiet. They're incandescent bulbs, not fluorescent. But listen, here's the neck pickup, a little bit of buzz, a little bit of buzz on the bridge. But if you put it in the center, mostly goes away. They're wired for canceling. So just a couple quick tones. Here's the neck pickup. Bridge pickup. And the center, both pickups. This is being recorded straight to the deck through an SM57. So I'll play you some distorted tones. I'm just going to hit the, what do I hit? The Andy Timmons distortion. Now the bridge. There you go. The only downside of this guitar being so nice is that now I'm not going to sell it. I've got way more fretwork into it than I would actually realize by selling it. With the fretwork done, it just feels fantastic. Do I recommend you buy one of these? I do. I recommend that everyone buy one of these. If you already have one guitar, it's a great second guitar. If you have no guitars, it makes a good only guitar. If you have 30 guitars, it makes an awesome 31st guitar. And for the price, it just can't be beat. So.